Hi, welcome back to Learn to Code. My name is Brandon. Today I'm going to be showing you a little bit more about another feature. And this feature is if statements, okay? If you don't know really what if statements are or how they work, today I'm going to be walking you through the full advanced topic of if statements. Give you a complete understanding on if statements in this video, okay? But first, we'll start out from the beginning, and then I'll go to more advanced things, talking about if statements. We'll talk about nested if statements. We'll talk about the or and statement, and many other things, okay? So let's get started. So the first thing you need to know is how to make a basic if statement. And the if statement is defined like this. So we just use the if word. But let's use something to judge. Okay, so an if is what we call a conditional. So first let's set a value. Let's set a value equal to true. And as you know, I talked about this in variables, the variable video I made about true and false Boolean values. So all an if statement is doing is checking to see if the value or the condition that is being evaluated is true. Okay, so that's the same for numbers. So let's say, for example, if you want to, well, I'll explain it later on. If you want to basically check to see if a number is equal to a certain value, then if that value is true, then you get to enter the if statement. If it's false, you don't. Okay, so we can say this. We can say if A, just like this, and this is basically saying, in this case, if A is equal to true, basically, essentially, that's what it's saying. We want to print, let's say we want to print yes, no. Okay, so there we go. Now, if we go ahead and print this statement right here, we're going to get yes. Now, let's say, for example, we decide to print this, put this to false. In this example, we don't get anything. Okay, so that's kind of how we want this program to run. Now, you can do other things. For example, let's say we define a value named b, and we're going to set this equal to, I don't know, 10. Okay, so let's say we wanted to say if, or let's actually, yeah, if b plus 2 is equal to 12. Okay, so we're just saying if b, which is 10, plus 2 is equal to 12, and you notice that I put two equal signs here. This is very important. We only put one equal sign here when we're defining a variable. This is the difference between defining a variable and evaluating a variable, I like to say. So here in this case, we're just setting a value. We're saying, okay, this value is equal to this value. And so you're setting it and changing it rather, or just defining it rather for the first time. This here, you're not defining it. You're just checking to see if this is the value that it's equal to. And so in this case, it is. So if you print it out, you're going to get yes. Obviously, if you change this, maybe let's say, for example, to this, you get nothing. Okay. Now, let's say, for example, as you know, this value, or rather this program does not print anything else out. Let's say you wanted to print no out, okay? And you could do something like this. Okay, you could do if b plus 2, and we use the exclamation point, not, and we put it like equal to 12. Then you could do print no. Okay, this in this case is okay. You can do this. The problem is it's kind of not the best practice, and I can kind of explain to you why. But in this case, we get no. If we change this back to 10, we're going to get yes. Okay? And you need to understand that this is not what we call a chained conditional. And if you don't know what chained conditionals are, I'm going to explain to you so you fully understand what they are. Basically, let's look at these as completely separate values, okay? So it's important to understand it's going to evaluate this one. If this one is true, then it's going to come into here. If this one is true, it's going to come into here, okay? So let's say, for example, we wanted to change this right here to that. You're going to get yes, no. Yes, no, okay? But let's say, for example, we just wanted this to execute just only when this is false. Well, it's best for us to use what we call a chained conditional. So there's this else key word, and this is basically linked to this value right here. Okay, and basically it says otherwise. Otherwise, go ahead and do this. So let's just erase this right here, and if we print no, in this case, this else statement will only execute when this value right here has not been executed. Okay, it's chained, it's linked together. Okay, so if we run this, you're going to see it's going to print yes. And if we go ahead and maybe take this off right here or change that value, we get no. Okay, and this is by default. You can see that this does not equal that, so it's going to come on down here and do this. It's what we call a chain. It's what we call a chained conditional. Okay, now another thing we can do, and I want to explain, is the Elif statement. Again, this is another chained conditional. Chained conditionals are very important. And if you, like I explained, just do this, a bunch of if statements, and not use else statements or an Elif statement, which is what I'm about to show you, then the if statement will check each condition, and you better hope that none of the conditions in that case are correct. For example, let's say if you want to do a certain action on a variable to add something to a variable, well, let's say, for example, the first action is run with the first if statement because it's true. Then it goes down to the second if statement to evaluate that to see if it's true, and because it has changed it, altered it, or whatever, it somehow matches the value and is true, then it's also going to enter that if statement and do the process as well. And we don't want that. The chained conditional, however, only one of the values will execute, or one of the if statements or clauses, whatever you want to call them, will execute. The other ones won't. And so it will only execute if that one is true. And it goes down the line. It checks the first one to see if it's true. If it's not true, then it goes on to the next one, and it checks to see if that one's true as well. If it is true, it goes on the next one, and finally comes the else statement, and that's basically like a default, like do this if nothing else is true. So we use the elif statement, which is defined by this. So elif b plus, I don't know, 3 is equal to 13. Then it's going to go ahead and print out yes. And let's do this in uppercase so we know the difference. So as you can see, I messed up right here. I put the equal sign, and there we go. Now in this case, you're going to see that both of these values are actually correct. So, well, not this one actually. This one needs to be updated. Sorry. So you're going to see that both of these values are correct. And I'll show you the difference here between an if statement run and an else statement run. I want to show you the difference between a conditional if statements and chained conditionals and non-chained. So if we just put an if there, and then we go ahead and put, I don't know, let's just take the if, oh yeah, we just want to take the if away. If, yeah, so I'm just going to take it away in this case because, yeah, because I think it's best in this situation. But as you can see, these are what we call chained. These are not chained. Okay, these are completely separate because when you define a new if statement, that's basically going to be like, okay, it's another line of if statements, and therefore they're not chained. So those are completely separate. Okay, in this situation. So let's go ahead and print it and see what we get. As you can see, we get yes, yes, yes. So where are the yeses coming from? So we can already understand that we get a yes from 12. Okay, so we come here. If b plus 2 is equal to 12, which it is, in this case it is, it's going to print yes. Now, since this is true, it's going to skip over this one and this one right here. So none of these values are going to be looked at or executed. Even though this one right here, this situation is true, it won't execute it because it's already executed this value right here. So it's just going to overlook these right here because they're chained. Okay, every other value, every other if statement in the chained conditional link, I guess you could say, whatever you want to call it, will not be executed. Okay, however, I apologize for my message. However, in the if statement that are not linked, in the if statements that are not linked, for example, you have here that we get yes because this is true, and we also get yes because this is true here. Hopefully that explains a little bit on if statements, chained and non-chained if statements. Okay, so let me go ahead and erase this, and we'll look at something else. So now that we've covered actually conditionals, chained conditionals, and the difference between non-chained conditionals, I kind of will look at a little bit about the different operations we can perform, operators maybe that we can perform. So you saw how we could add a number and check to see if it's equal. But let's say, for example, we wanted to check to see if it's greater than, or maybe we wanted to check to see if multiple values, we want to check multiple conditions and see if they're correct. I'm going to show you how to do that here. So let's use an if statement. First, let's define a value. Let's define a value and call it 5, okay? So let's say we have an if statement. We call if a is less than, or I'm sorry, greater than, and we can say greater than maybe 6, which in this case, this is false. Print yes, okay? Now it's important to understand this will not run in this situation. And again, this can be applied for any elif statement, if statement. So just know this is the same for any elif statement or if statement. It does not matter on conditional in situation conditional. So you can tell that this right here is not greater than 6. So let's say though if we put this at 4, well then all of a sudden it is greater, and yes, this is true. So this runs, okay? Now let's say for example we wanted to check if a was greater than 4, but it was also less than 100. Okay, how could we do that? And making sure that both values are correct. Okay, we can use what we call the AND statement. Okay, now the AND statement means that both of these values must be true. Okay, so we already know that this value right here is true. It's going to evaluate the next value and make sure that it's true as well. So let's say A is less than 100. Okay, in this case it is, and if you run the program, we're going to get yes again. But let's say, for example, we edited this to, I don't know, maybe 101. Well, then all of a sudden it doesn't run because this one right here is false. Okay, and in that case, the program doesn't run. We can use the AND statement to put multiple statements in here. So, for example, we could even put a third statement, okay, if we wanted to. And we could go on and on and on how many AND statements or how many AND clauses we want in each if statement. And so you can do that. That's a way to minimize the amount of if statements you have to use. It's just an effective way to get rid of them. But let's say, for example, you wanted just one of these values to be correct. Okay, maybe you don't want every one of them to be correct. That would be sometimes a little bad. Maybe you're checking to see, if this variable is a special value or special number, your special number that you are looking for. And if you look for it, you're going to just print works or something like that, or yes, or you won. Then what you're going to want to do is you're going to use the OR statement, okay? So we're going to say A is equal to let's say 3, or A is equal to, let's do 9. And we can also do it one more time, or as many times as you want. I'm going to do it 3 times. A is equal to, I don't know, maybe, I'm going to do 23. Okay, just random numbers. Okay, as you can see, this A value is not equal to neither one of them. Okay, so it's just going to print nothing. But if we change it to 9, in this case, this is true. So it prints it. In this clause, in this if statement, clause, whatever you want to call it, this only one of these values are true, and that's all you need to make this if statement run. Okay, it's just one to be true. However, in the and statement, you have to have all of them. It's very important to understand a very big difference between that. Obviously, you can use the less than or greater than operators. You can also use the less than or equal to operators. So, for example, we can use that operator. We can also use this operator here. Both operators work. Equal to, basically, less than equal to, or greater than or equal to. So that is what those mean. This obviously means equals to. We also have, let's think, we have the or, as you saw, the or and key. Oh, we got random from that. We don't need that in that case, that situation. These are a couple ways to, I guess you could say, evaluate the situation and see what they are. Now you can just put a simple checking to see if it's true. Just like I said if this is a Boolean value, we can just do if A, for example, just check to see if it's true. Then that will only execute, the if statement will only execute when the variable is true. Now that's a good example of that in that situation. And what I want to go on to learning is what we call nested conditionals, okay? So let's say, for example, you have a certain condition that you want to have executed, and then after that condition executes, you want to look and do another conditional. Maybe you can't necessarily put the value in the if statement and evaluate it at the moment there. You have to evaluate it later on the program. Now, it's very important to understand that you don't have to have, like, be evaluating the same thing. For example, I just wanted to cover this real quick. Let's say if you have b is equal to, I don't know, 6, and you wanted to check to see if b was also equal to or not. And if you put and here in this situation, this is basically checking to see if b is equal to 6. So one of these values must be correct in this situation, and b has to be correct. So that's one thing I want to cover. So you notice we get yes, but let's say, for example, if we take away that, we're going to get false, or we're not going to get it. Oh no, we will get it because we have the and, we have the or statements. So this is something actually I'm not very good with. I've never had to put and or together, so I'm just going to put or, and b is equal to, let's just do 6 right here in that case. Oops, and yes, we forgot to do that right there. And let's say, for example, in this case, let's just change these up a little bit. Let's change this to, I don't know, 10, so that you get to see how this works. And we get yes because of the 6, but if we change that up like there, we're not going to get anything. Okay, so yeah, that's understandable, but we can do that. But let's say, for example, we have to do some other value or check some other things in this case if these values are correct, if this is true. Then what we're going to want to use is we're going to want to use what we call a nested if statement. So an if statement inside an if statement. And this could go on for perpetuity. We can do if statement inside if statement inside if statement inside if statement, just on and on and on and on and on. Okay, but that's not best practice. It's best practice to try to avoid nested if statements. You don't really want to do it and get real messy quickly. So let's kind of look at what we would do. So let's go to do if, I don't know, maybe if, let's do B, or maybe what we want to do is we want an action to occur. So let's say we're going to do B is equal to B plus, what do you think, 7? That sounds good. Okay, so in this case it's 14. And we want to check to see if this value is equal to, let's say, in this case, 13. So if B is equal to 13, then let's go ahead and print, oops, yes, it is, okay, there we go. Now, it's very important to understand that in this case, it's probably not going to run, or actually it won't run, because this if statement will hit false and won't run because of these values. None of these are correct, and so it won't even enter this if statement and do this right here. Okay, so we get nothing, as you can see. But if we go ahead and change this up to 6, well, then everything is going to run in this situation, because this right here, if you add B plus 7, you're going to get 13. And of course, if you wanted to change this up, you could change it up, and this would be wrong. And all you're going to do is get yes, as you can see in the situation, because this right here, this value is false, and therefore it doesn't run. Again, you can put an else statement here to default. Okay, so maybe we want to write, no it isn't, no it isn't, and you notice, yeah, that works right here. And it's very important to understand about strings is that, as you can see, I had to put this single quotation mark, so I put these double quotation marks so this could be included into the if statement. That's an example of using quotation marks inside strings. Sometimes you can do it and sometimes you have to. It's necessary. In this case, isn't. Okay, so yes it is, no it isn't. In this case, we're going to get no it isn't, because it's just going to default to no it isn't. But if we change it again, obviously, to that, let's say, then yes it is. And it doesn't even print this. So again, we could do another if statement inside of this if statement. We could also do an if statement, change conditional in here, and on and on and on and on and on. It would go over and over again. You'd have so many if statements packed inside of each other, but that can be a little counterintuitive, and it can get very like hard to see what's going on very quickly. Okay, now there's one more thing I need to show you. Okay, so now there's one more thing I need to show you before I give you a project for this week. And this is, I want to show you a specific operation you can run. And let me just show you it. So let's say we have A is a percent sign. Let's do 2 is equal to 0. So you may be like, what's going on here? Okay, so this right here, this value right here, returns to you the, it returns to you the difference or the remainder of this operation. For example, let's print this out. In this case, A is equal to 10. So we should, well, we'll see what we get. We should not get 0, definitely, I don't think. I think we maybe get 2. I think that's what we're going to get. Yes, you can see as we get 2. So if you divide A by 2, you're going to have a remainder of 2, because we cannot divide 10 by 4 evenly, because it will give us a remainder. But if we put this to 2, we're going to get 0 in this situation, because you can divide 5 or 10 by 2 and get a remainder of 0, and so therefore it's 0. So we're checking to see basically if this value is 0 or if it's not. So now let's say what we want to do is we could go ahead and check this condition in an if statement. We could go if let's say A, again percent sign, 2 is equal to 0. So basically we're saying if the remainder here is equal to 0, then what we want to do is go ahead and print a certain value, maybe, I don't know, yes, this is fine, that's fine. Now it's important to understand that we're basically checking to see if this is divisible by 2. Essentially, you're trying to divide this by 2 and check to see if it's divisible by 2. So keep that in mind, understand that, because this project will be using this value in the project. So you will need this heavily in the project. So as you can see, this runs, yes it is, but if, of course you change it up a little bit, something like that, and we still get yes it is, because, let me think, why do we get yes it is? Oh no, do we get yes it is? Oh, we don't get that yes it is. We check. We have 2 yes it is. So we get yes. Oh, yes this is, yes it is. I wasn't looking at that real quick, but basically yes this works. This yes this is, we don't get yes this is in this case. Okay, so that's basically a general rundown on if statements, conditionals, the Alif statement, the Alif statement, nested if statements. And now I want to go in and give you a project so that you can practice what you know. Okay, so we're going to be looking at a specific project that is rather popular for Java, okay, but we don't want to do this for Java today, and maybe later on in the future I'll make a Java course and I'll use this project, but today we're working with Python, okay, and now what I want you to do is create a program that takes input from the user. Specifically, we need to get an integer value, okay, so make sure to obtain an integer value. After you obtain this integer value, then what you want to do is you want to check to see if it's divisible by 5 or 3. If it is divisible by both, we want to go ahead and print fizzbuzz. Okay, if it is only divisible by 5, then just print fizz. However, if it's divisible by 3, print buzz. Lastly, if it is divisible by if the number is not divisible by 5 or 3, then just print the number, okay? So if you look at below, here's kind of what you'll get. So number A, enter a number. We enter number 1 and we get 1 back because it's divisible by neither 1. I'm sorry, divisible by neither 3 nor 5. If we print 3, we get buzz because it's divisible by 3. If we print 10 or enter 10, then we get fizz because it's divisible by 10 or 5. And lastly, if we print 15 or put in 15, then we get fizzbuzz because it's divisible by both. Okay, so that's kind of a rundown on the project. So go ahead and try this project, and then I'll show you my solution after. So go ahead and pause the video and try this problem. Okay, so I hope you were successful with your project. Hopefully you were, and maybe you had a problem, and I'll show you a possible issue you could have had if, for example, maybe you messed it up and you didn't really understand exactly what you're doing. So let me go and explain to you what this program's doing. So as you can see, I get the number and I convert it and cast it to an integer right here. You can define it again. Maybe you write something like number is equal to int parentheses number. You can do that. That's fine, but this is just good enough. So as you can see in this situation, I'm just going ahead and converting it to an integer right when we get it. So this will throw an error if you enter a text. So don't enter text or you'll get an error. So, and obviously you'd get an error down here as well if that were to continue, but it doesn't, it crashes. So as you can see right here, it says if number is divisible by 3. Checking to see if this is 0, because if it's 0, then it is divisible by 3. If it isn't, then it's obviously, if it isn't 0, then it's not divisible. And as you can see, we check the and. Number 5 is divisible by, or the number 5 divisible by 0, or divisible by 5. The number is divisible by 5. Sorry, apologize for that terrible explanation. And as you can see, we put this here first. Okay, we wanted to check this if statement, this situation first. It's very important to understand if you check the other ones first, you may have an error. For example, let's say you put this one at the bottom right before else. Okay, so let's say the program would come on down here. Let's say you have, in this case, 3. You're checking to see if the number is divisible by 3. And so it comes down here and it checks if number is divisible by 3. Then it's going to activate this one right here, do buzz, but it won't do fizz buzz because it's already executed this situation, this clause. It's checked to see if this is correct, and therefore, since this is true, this won't be executed. Okay, and that's very important to understand, because this basically, if you don't put this at the top, this will never execute. However, this one right here, it's possible this one could execute because it's possible that the other situation right here is false. However, at the same time, it's possible that this could execute as well, because it's possible that this value is false. Okay, and lastly, it's possible that this one could execute because it's possible that both of these are false. Okay, again, we're just going through and saying if these values, if number is divisible by 3 and 5. So let's go ahead and copy this into the interpreter, and we're going to take a look and see how it runs. Okay, so you can see now that in this situation we have all these in the correct order. And so if we go ahead and run this, let's go ahead and put 15 in here. We're going to get fizz buzz. And let's stop that. Sorry, it wanted to run. Okay, we get fizz buzz like we were expecting. Let's run this again. And let's go ahead and put, I don't know, 55 in here. And it's doing something about the recursion problem, and we can look, I'll look at that later. I don't know really what's going on. We get fizz because it is divisible by 5. Okay, and as you can see, that'll probably continue to run like it's supposed to. And now in this case, I'm just going to print 1, or let's do 4 rather, or yeah, let's do 4, and we get 4. So everything works kind of how it's supposed to, and I hope you were successful with this project. Okay, so make sure to give this video a like, make sure to subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time on Learn to Code. Bye.